President, I rise tonight to express my concern with how Congress continues to address this package of so-called extenders. This is a debate we've had on multiple occasions this year, and once again we find ourselves discussing how to enact a short-term extension of items such as emergency unemployment benefits, reauthorization of the National Flood Insurance Program, the federal Medicaid matching rate, FMAP, and the Medicare doc fix. This is a difficult debate for many of us. Times are tough across the country, as well as in my home state of Georgia, where the unemployment rate is 10.4%. During a time of economic hardship, I don't believe we should allow provisions like the extension of emergency unemployment benefits to expire. But I do believe that when we extend these programs, we should do so in a responsible fashion. Congress should find a way to pay for those extensions. Mr. President, that's where the disagreement on this issue, not whether Congress should pass an extenders package, but whether or not they should be paid for. Even though the need for these extensions comes as no surprise, we again find ourselves in a position where the majority has proposed extending these programs without finding the money to fund them. Just 2 weeks after our federal debt topped $13 trillion, and let me say that one more time, $13 trillion is owed by the United States of America today. We are now poised to vote on another proposal that would spend money this country simply does not have. That number, $13 trillion, is so big that it's difficult to comprehend. But what it boils down to is $42,000 of debt for every single citizen of the United States of America. The public debt has risen by $2.4 trillion in the 500 days since the current administration took office. That's an average of $4.9 billion per day. We are now borrowing 43 cents of every dollar we spend, but still we're continuing to spend. Estimates show that $4.8 trillion of the $9 trillion in debt that America will accrue over the next decade will be from interest. That's $4.8 trillion that could be better used on national defense or returned to taxpayers to pay for other necessities. And instead, future generations will be forced to pay higher taxes to foot the bill for Congress's out-of-control spending. With much of our national debt being held by other nations, such as China, this is also an issue of national security. Just as with our energy and food supply, we put our nation in a more vulnerable position when we disproportionately rely on other countries. It is a matter of great concern that our nation is in deep debt to foreign countries that often do not share our positions on domestic or international policy matters. With our global economy, it ensures that there will be foreign investment in our debt. This sustained exploding debt guarantees that we provide leverage to our creditors. At some point, we have to say enough is enough and make some tough decisions about spending beyond our means. Again, we can pass an extenders package without recklessly adding to the cost of our federal debt. Earlier this year, this body voted to give the rule known as pay-go the force of law. And yet, virtually every piece of legislation that we've considered between then and now has fallen short of this standard. Talking about fiscal responsibility and restraint while spending recklessly is hypocrisy of which the American people will surely take notice, and they have taken notice. States as well are being left in the fiscal lurch by not shoring up the federal Medicaid matching rate. My state of Georgia will have a $370.5 million hole in its budget. We have had to make sacrifices at home. My legislature has had to make very difficult, hard, and tough decisions with respect to trying to find reductions in spending at the state level to come up with a fiscally responsible budget and a balanced budget that they are required to have under our state constitution. We know states are facing huge challenges, relying as they do on money promised from the federal government. But we all need to keep in mind that we're borrowing virtually every cent of that money. It's time we get serious about this nation's precarious fiscal situation. We can no longer afford to burden our grandchildren with insurmountable debt. Recently, we witnessed what happens when a nation doesn't live within its means. The economic crisis in Greece was caused by years of unbridled spending and failure to implement financial reforms. This recklessness left Greece badly exposed when the global economic downturn appeared. This pattern should serve as a wake-up call to every one of us that spending must be controlled. Retirement programs such as Medicare and Social Security are on the verge of bankruptcy. In March of this year, reports emerged that Social Security is set to pay out more in benefits than it receives in payroll taxes this year, a threshold the program wasn't expected to cross until at least 2016. By some estimates, the program will no longer be able to pay retirees full benefits by the year 2037. Instead of trying to place programs like Social Security on more stable footing, we spent more than a year debating a health care bill that will create even more costly entitlement programs, the true price tag of which is yet to be seen. The original proposal that was debated earlier and voted on today, advanced by the majority, increased spending by $126 billion, which included more than $70 billion in new taxes, and increased the deficit by $79 billion over the next 10 years. Thank goodness the votes were not there to proceed with that underlying bill. Now, according to the chairman of the Finance Committee, we have a new bill. And while it is smaller in dollars, according to the comments made by the chairman of the Finance Committee earlier tonight, he says also that it's more paid for. The majority of the amendment is offset, which means, Mr. President, it is still not paid for. We have an opportunity tomorrow to take a step toward responsibility and restraint by paying for this extenders package. I'm a co-sponsor of the amendment introduced by the senator from South Dakota, Senator Thune, which would extend the same programs as the House-passed version of this legislation. But unlike that version, the Thune amendment pays for those programs instead of adding their costs to the federal debt. It also cuts taxes by $26 billion, cuts spending by more than $100 billion, and according to the CBO, reduces the deficit by $55 billion. And it does this through spending cuts and the use of unobligated stimulus funds. The Thune Amendment does away with the harmful tax increases on long-term investment that are part of the underlying bill. These taxes on carried interest would almost certainly serve to discourage capital investment, increase borrowing costs associated with starting or growing businesses, and hurt real estate and stock prices all at a time when our economy is extremely vulnerable. The real estate and venture capital arenas, two segments of our economy that are vital to sustained job growth, would be especially hard hit by these taxes on long-term investments. Many Americans need the programs in this bill to be extended, but we must make sure that we extend them in a responsible way. And that's why I urge my colleagues to strongly consider the Thune Amendment as we debate it tomorrow and vote in favor of the Thune Amendment. With that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor, and I would suggest the absence of a quorum.